In this video, we're going to look at some of the internals of nHibernate. Now, as you recall from when we introduced nHibernate writes SQL for us, and it lets us write code in a way that feels more natural in an object-oriented language. But that isn't to say that nHibernate will always do the right thing. In fact, we have two issues with the way that we display our posts. Now, normally, if it was just on the admin, I wouldn't mind. And I'll show you the issues right here. If we look at posts and go to our index.cshtml, we'll see that we access two relationships. We access the user relationship and we access the tags relationship. Now, if this was just on the admin, I'd be fine with it, but we're also going to be using a similar technique for the front end, so I want to address the problem. But what is the problem?
I have no idea.
Well, I'm about to show you.
All right.
And I'm going to show you using a tool called the nHibernate Profiler. The nHibernate Profiler is a tool that has been built by one of the developers of nHibernate. He's also the lead developer of RavenDB as well, another database engine. In addition, he also makes other profilers like Entity Framework Profile, Link to SQL, LLB, LGen, and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, this is not a free product, but if you're going to use nHibernate, I highly recommend it. You can also see the problems that we're about to have in a query log if you enable that on your database server, which I would recommend to do if you do not feel like purchasing the nHibernate Profiler. I fortunately already have the nHibernate Profile purchased and installed, and I've placed it in a directory on my hard drive under my software folder, and this is what it looks like. Now, in order to integrate nHibernate Profiler with my project, I have to actually do a little bit of work. I need to take this hibernatingrhinos.profiler.appender DLL and place it into my project, reference it, and invoke a specific method inside of my application start. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to move this window off to the side, and I'm going to right-click on my solution and say Open Folder in File Explorer. That'll make it so I can open this up and I can go ahead and add additional DLL dependencies inside of my project. I'm going to do that in the lib folder. That's a fairly standard place to put external dependencies that you can't acquire over NuGet. Technically, you can acquire nHibernate Profile over NuGet, but it is weird because it comes with the whole package, then the paths get all messed up and I can't put an icon in it on my start menu, and it's weird.
All right. We don't like weird, so let's do it this way.
Alright, so I'm going to open up lib, and then I'm going to add another folder called nHprof, nHibernate Profiler, and I'm going to simply copy this file into it. So hibernating rhinos profiler appender. Now all I need to do is go into my project and add a reference to it. Now I'm not going to be adding a NuGet reference, instead I'm going to use the normal add reference button, which has become horribly underused since the advent of NuGet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Browse, and I'm going to navigate to my folder, which is going to be under my simple blog, lib, nHprof, hibernating rhinos profiler appender. I'm going to add that in and hit OK. Now that I have that reference in my project, I need to tell nHibernate Profiler to start. I do that in my global ASICs, in my application start method. To find the code that you need to add in order to get the Hibernate Profiler to work, just look at the howtouse.txt file. It'll tell you right here near the top that you need to add this line of code inside of your app start. Sound good?
Yeah.
So I'm simply...
Nice of them to give that to you.
Oh yeah. So I'm going to copy this line of code, and I'm going to place it at the top of my application start. Then I'm going to rebuild. Now, nothing amazing is going to happen quite yet, except that I can now launch nHibernate Profiler and watch every single SQL query that happens through nHibernate. So I basically lied when I said nothing amazing is going to happen, because it's pretty amazing.
All right.
So let's open up my nHibernate Profiler, and we get this program that just disappeared off my window, or out of my display area. And I found it. Here it is. Come back.
You and your multiple screens.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you use it? Well, all I have to do is go to my simple blog admin, hit refresh. sometimes it takes a second to load up the first connection. Let's hit refresh one more time. Now we see all of the sessions. And check this out. We see every line of SQL that nHibernate is generating on our project. We see how long it took, how many rows it returned, and we also see alerts. Look at this. We're getting some alerts here. The problem will actually become significantly more evident if I open up my post controller up in my admin, so areas admin post controller, and I scroll all the way up to the top where my post per page constant is, and I change that to 10, and I rebuild. If I jump back into my nHibernate profiler and my page and hit refresh, we're going to see even bigger problem. Look at all these queries.
That doesn't seem happy.
No. What we are experiencing is what's called the SELECT N+1. What that means is we had it so that we returned all of the posts to our view as post objects, correct?
Correct.
But we only told nHibernate to load data from one table. So what happens when we, inside of our view, when we say things like post.tags? Well, that data isn't loaded yet. nHibernate, we didn't tell nHibernate to load the tags. We just told nHibernate to load the posts.
All right.
So what happens is every single iteration of this for each loop will execute another query over and over and over again because it has to acquire the tags for every post that it gets, which makes it an issue. We see the same query repeated multiple times. In fact, if we look at the stack trace of this query, we'll see exactly where it's happening, which is right in index.cshtml at line 61, which happens to be the exact line I had highlighted.
Gotcha.
We want to make it so nHibernate eagerly loads our tags. We want to make it so nHibernate fetches all of the data it needs before it sends it off to the view. Now, we can do that fairly easily, but it's going to cause a problem. We'll show you guys how to do it fairly easily, but first I want to add some more tags. The reason I'm adding a bunch of tags is because, as you'll see, it'll cause problems when we try to, quote, fix it, unquote. I forgot, I never actually added content into the original things, remember?
Ah, yes.
Okay, so now we have a bunch of tags. Okay, now if you do some Googling, you'll find out this really awesome method called fetch. Fetch is a way to instruct nHibernate to include data in a single query, which sounds like exactly what we want, right?
Sounds like it.
So what do you think is going to happen when I do .fetch many f goes into tags? In theory, this should inform nHibernate to eagerly load all of our tags for all of our posts. And I'm going to hit F6. Now I'm going to come back to the Hibernate profiler. I'm going to right click and say clear all sessions. Then I'm going to come over here and hit refresh and wait an hour for the web server to restart.
Oh, that wasn't an hour.
Okay, you'll notice two things. First of all, it seems like it's fixed. We only have 4 queries. One query is for our user. One query is for our user's roles. One query is for the amount of total posts in the database. And the last query seems to be for our tags and our posts. Doesn't that sound like exactly what we want, Steve?
It does, but your continual usage of the word seems is disturbing me.
Look at how many posts were returned. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How many posts did we tell nHibernate or tell our system that we wanted?
10.
What is going on?
I don't know. What have you done?
Well, clearly I broke it. I fixed it and broke it at the same time. See, that's a very impressive technical feat.
It's kind of like the true is false thing.
Yeah, effectively. To describe exactly what's going on would require a venture into SQL and how joins work. I highly recommend that people familiarize themselves with SQL. This video series is not about SQL specifically, but I can explain it hopefully in a way that'll make sense. What we have going on is a combination of an eager loading and pagination. The eager loading is implemented as a join. What do joins do? Well, joins like to repeat rows. What do I mean by that? Well, fortunately, the way that that nHibernate profiler is really cool, I can just take this query, copy it, and I can jump into SQL Workbench, paste it, and run it. You see that?
I see that.
This is what we get back. Notice the duplicated data. The reason data is duplicated is we are effectively getting what's called a Cartesian product from the join of our tags and our posts. Meaning, if we have a post that has 5 tags, with this query, that'll return 5 rows for that one post.
That seems wrong.
Well, it's the way SQL works, unfortunately. It's what we just have to deal with. It's just how it works. There's no way for SQL is heavily based in set theory, and our relational databases work in sets. Unfortunately, there is no hierarchy in sets, so this is the only way it can work.
All right, so how do we get around this?
Well, it wouldn't be a problem if we didn't have this at the end of it. This limit 010 tells SQL to grab starting at the first row, grab the next 10 rows. This is how we implement pagination, right?
Yep.
So we're saying we want the 10 rows. But because of the way the join is working, every post can be one to many rows, depending on how many tags are inserted on it. Which means it's effectively cutting us off because of the tags. Because we're fetching the tags as a join, the tags are increasing the amount of rows that are returned, duplicating data. Because
Gotcha.
we're limiting on 0 and 10, we're only getting 10 rows, even though some of those rows are now going to contain duplicate posts. Therefore, we return fewer posts.
Got it. That actually made sense to me. I'm amazed.
Okay, so the way to fix it is actually fairly straightforward, but it's only straightforward if you understand the problem. The way we fix it is instead of doing our pagination and our filtering and ordering and fetching in the same query, we turn it into 2 queries. The first query returns a list of IDs, of post IDs that we want. The second query will perform the fetching of the additional data.
All right.
So we do that by simply saying var post IDs equals database session query post. Order by descending. This is important. We want to do the order by descending on both queries. Created at. Then we want to put in our pagination. Skip page -1 times posts per page. Take post per page. Select p goes into p.id .toArray. What this will do is this will return an array of post IDs based off of our pagination, filtering, and ordering. Then we want to actually perform the real query, the query that actually gets the meat of our posts. And that query will perform the fetching.
Okie dokie.
So we'll still want to do the order by descending in the second query as well. And we'll want to do the fetch many. And we'll also want to fetch the user. So fetch f goes into f user. But we no longer want to do the skip and take. Pagination is no longer useful. So how do we constrain the posts returned? We simply make sure that we're getting posts that are included in this list of IDs. Which we can do by saying where post IDs contains p.id.
Alrighty.
Now I hit F6. Jump back into my profile. I'm going to clear out all sessions again. Jump back into my website, move it to the right, hit refresh, and see what happens.
So now it should be calculating those things separately, except now we have an error.
Yes.
What happened?
Something.
Are you going to tell me what?
Maybe.
Okay.
I have to figure it out first. Which one is it throwing on? It's throwing on line 30, so that's the second query. Blah, 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 blah. Post IDs is an array, says contains, that works. Oh, I know it's wrong. I did the where after the fetch many and the fetch in order by descending.
Aha.
That's actually, it doesn't like that very much. For some reason, the order of the fetching actually does matter. It shouldn't, but it does. Okay, so let's look at what happened. First of all, we now have 5 queries, which is a whole lot less than we had before, but one more than we had when we had the error with the pagination. And if we look at the queries, we have first a query to retrieve how many posts there are in the database, how many total posts. Then we get a query that returns the IDs of the posts that need to be on the first page. Then we do a query to actually return the content of the user and the tags and the posts for the posts in this ID with these IDs.
Alrighty.
What we get is, let's count how many posts we get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
So we fixed it.
We did fix it. Hopefully. I think we're having a slight... No, we're not. It's working. I don't know why this looked weird to me for a second. Maybe it's just because I've been staring at it for too long.
That could be. So now this works basically because we're asking it to calculate those two separate things separately now.
Correct.
Gotcha.
We're doing the pagination with this query, and then we're doing the fetching of the real data in this query.
And that spares it getting confused.
Exactly. We can clean up the code slightly. So before we end this video, I want to clean up the code just a tad. I don't want to repeat order by descending in both cases. So I can just say var base query equals database session query post dot order by descending. That's not how you spell descending. Is it how you spell it? It's not. That's not either. Why can't I spell? I've never been able to spell. Haven't you noticed that?
Here and there, but I think it may have something to do with typing for 9 hours too.
Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm taking out the order by descending in the database session query, and I'm placing it into a variable, so I don't have to repeat myself.
And you get cleaner, nicer code that's easier for other people to look at.
Exactly. So now it's very obvious that this is doing the pagination and the filtering, if we had any filtering, and this is doing the data retrieval.
Very nice. I like that. Elegant, sir.
Yep, we have successfully slayed the most troubling issue that plagues any ORM. The notorious SELECT +1. And sorry, SELECT N+1.
That is sweet. That is very, very sweet.
Awesome. So the last thing we're going to go ahead and do is we are going to commit. And I'm just going to go ahead and say commit all this stuff. Commit fixed select N+1 in posts admin and say commit. And I think that wraps this video up.
Excellent. Let's see what we got next.